As sometimes happens, a moment settled and hovered and remained for much more than a moment. And sound stopped and movement stopped for much, much more than a moment. That quote comes from John Steinbeck. And for me, it truly represents the wholeness of a day where we were all connected to a moment that remained much, much more than a moment. Indeed, 9/11 was a day that the world stopped turning. It felt at times that sound stopped and that movement ceased. Globally, individuals like you and I, we became one because our differences really didn't seem to matter anymore. It wasn't important. Our hearts were connected. Although it's been almost a decade, we can relive that moment with such intensity because we were redefined and transformed in our lives moving forward. We don't just remember generally where we were on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. We know if we were sitting or standing when we heard the news. We know what the weather was like outside, the clothes we were wearing. We remember feeling those goosebumps peppering our arms and that sensation of the hair when it stands on the back of your neck. We remember the sounds in the background and the smells in our immediate area. On 9/11, I was 33, and I owned a successful consulting firm in New York City, and I was living at 17 John Street, which was about a block or so away from the towers. I loved my apartment. It was huge, huge terrace, floor-to-ceiling windows, which I had wide open, because if you remember that day in New York City, there was not a cloud in the sky, mid-70s, and this warm breeze. My life was in transition. There was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unhappiness. You see, I loved being an entrepreneur. I just didn't love my business partners and our business relationship. 2 weeks prior, my boyfriend and I of 6 years ended our relationship. I was set to move to a studio apartment on the Upper West Side on September 12th. September 11th was a jam-packed day for me. I had numerous client appointments. My sister and nephew were flying up from Tampa that morning, and I was supposed to pick them up at the airport. It was also the mayoral election, Michael Bloomberg versus Mark Green. I ran out of my apartment, got to the World Trade Center to take the E about 8:40, and I realized, Michelle, you forgot your cell phone. Got back to the front of my building, and have you ever had those moments where everything gets really still, and there's this heaviness and this eerie silence, and it only lasted for a few seconds, and then there was this roar, and what sounded like shattering glass and screeching metal. I had no idea where to look, and then I noticed there were all these people standing on the streets, and they were pointing up to the sky, and I looked up, and it was the North Tower, and there was black smoke billowing from it. I ran into my building, took the elevator to the 16th floor, where we had this beautiful roof deck. There were already about 20 people up there. We're all standing together, and we're wondering out loud, what in the hell just happened? Was it a helicopter? Was it a small plane? Surely it had to be an accident. Something mechanical must have gone wrong, and that will explain the fact that I'm seeing this huge gash in the tower with smoke coming from it, debris, papers flying everywhere. Not too much later, I noticed larger, heavier objects were falling from much higher floors. and I just closed my eyes and my body went numb. Because I wouldn't allow myself to acknowledge out loud or to listen to my brain that I was seeing people. Because if I did that, then all the craziness that was happening was real. Now, I want to just share a little quick tidbit about New Yorkers. We're an interesting bunch. And most of us do not know the names of our next-door neighbors. It doesn't matter if they're next to us on the same floor, in the same building. It doesn't matter if we've all lived together for years. We don't know their names, but we know their dogs' names. Right? You all know him, right? What I found astounding and extraordinary as I look back on that day on that rooftop, all of us knew each other's faces. We didn't know each other's names, but we were leaning against each other. Arms holding each other's waists, hands on backs. We were physically and emotionally supporting each other. A bunch of us ran into the entertainment room that was on that floor, and we turned on the TV, and it was revealed that all of New York City was just as confused as we were, and all the morning shows had been replaced by news. And then I remembered, Michelle, you still don't have your cell phone. And you know your grandmother's probably called you 100 times, along with everyone else in your family from Florida to New Jersey. So I stepped back out onto the terrace, the roof deck, to grab the elevator, and that's when I saw that commercial airliner slice into the South Tower. I heard screams from the ground and screams all around me. And I know my mouth was open, but no sound came out. It was as if my screams were internalized. I wasn't about to take the elevator, and so I ran down 14 flights of stairs, ran into my apartment, found my phone, grabbed my dog. I'm about ready to run out the door again, and something stops me. Michelle, close your windows. I close my windows, and instead of leaving my building, I go back to the roof. Now, at this point, there's about 100 people gathered, a handful of dogs, and our building manager. Most people had their cell phones out. Most people were yelling, frustrated, because either they didn't have a signal, or every time they tried to make a call, all it would do was ring busy. I looked at my phone, and I had close to 50 missed calls. A lot of them were from my mom. And then I remembered, my sister and nephew are supposed to be on a plane. I don't know if they're in the air. I don't know if they're ready to taxi down the runway. And so I pick up my phone, and I'm like, please, God, let me connect with my mother. And I did. My phone worked. It worked the entire day. My battery never died. When I reached my mom, she was pulled off on the side of the road, the Courtney Campbell Causeway in Tampa. She said, Michelle, I don't know where to go. Do I go back? Do I stay here? And as we talked things out, she finally found the notes for my sister's flight, and she's like, Michelle, it hasn't taken off yet. I said, go back there. Meanwhile, my sister calls in. She's like, tell Mom to get back here, and we've got to deal with a very upset 3-year-old who does not understand why he's not going to go on his first plane ride to see his favorite aunt. I said, I will spoil him later. Those of us that had working cell phones passed them around to the group so that they could reach their loved ones, connect with them, as well as them being concerned for their friends who were taking flights that day or who worked in the towers. The smell of diesel was everywhere. It felt like it was coating my skin, and I was finding it more and more difficult to breathe. All the building manager wanted was for us to get the hell off the roof and back into our apartments. And that's when the rumbling started. On the 16th floor of a building, a block or so away, I felt the ground move. And then there was the implosion of concrete and steel, and this thick wave of smoke that rolled out into the sky. And it spread so quickly, and it felt like I could just reach out and touch it. I couldn't believe how quickly close to 100 people, about 20 dogs, got off that roof. What was extraordinary is everyone was concerned about each other's safety. Take your time walking down. Several of us stopped on the 15th floor. Building management said, anybody that can help, I want to knock on doors, see if people were okay. One after the other, knocking on doors, going into apartments, closing windows. Everybody's windows were open. Collecting the dogs to get them all to a safer space in the basement level. While we were all running around, we heard the North Tower crash to the ground. I cannot tell you how many times all I wanted to do was just stop and curl into a ball and just go, this can't be happening, and I just wanted to scream and cry. But I knew if I stopped, I wasn't getting back up. When we got down to the lobby, I looked out toward John Street, and it was like it was midnight outside. All of a sudden, people were running into our lobby. They were covered from head to toe with cement and dust, black smudges all over their faces, cuts, abrasions. We were emptying water dispensers so they could clean out their eyes, clear their throats. I knew it was time to evacuate. Everyone's saying you have to get to a safer location. It's like, what's that? I was blessed that I had so many friends living in Manhattan, and they were calling me nonstop saying, Michelle, head north, head west. We are going to find you. Okay. I ran back upstairs one more time, filled my backpack with bottles of water, grabbed a flashlight, took 2 bandanas, wrapped one around my face, and somehow that dog just knew not to mess with Mom. And she let me wrap a bandana around her muzzle. We left, and it took me about an hour just to get oriented. That flashlight was useless, by the way, because I couldn't see an inch in front of me. It wasn't just thick like fog. There are particles in it, too. The bandanas worked so-so. Burning eyes. I was zigzagging through streets, and I was just hoping I was going in the right direction. And I kept stopping, running into lobbies or delis where I could clean out my eyes, rinse out the bandanas. During my journey, I can't tell you how many people I saw stopping to help. People that had cars that were parked that couldn't move were asking people, do you need to rest? Here's my car. As I was walking through streets, people that worked in diners and delis and restaurants were bringing food and water outside. When I got to a section where traffic was moving, albeit at a snail's pace, people were rolling down their windows saying, what can I do? Where can I help you to go? Amazing. About 4 p.m., I finally reached my friends on the Upper West Side, covered from head to toe, me and my dog, and I didn't want to think about all the things that I was carrying with me. And I had no clean clothes. I walked into the Gap on 68th and Broadway, and the only person that was there was the store manager because he had sent his friends or his workers home. He came up to me and he said, what do you need? I started crying. I'm like, well, pretty much everything. I got no clothes. I don't know when I'm going back to my apartment. And he let me just cry. And he said, you know what? Come with me. And we start walking through this store, and all of a sudden there were all these sales. Buy 1 pair of socks, get 3 free. Your name is Michelle? T-shirts are free. I will never forget him. We are still in touch. I will never forget the Gap. I will never forget the small business owners. Let me tell you, it wasn't just that day, but many days after. The generosity, human spirit, compassion, grace, and love was extraordinary at a time where other people in the past might have taken advantage of that situation. It didn't happen here in New York City. I was so proud to be a New Yorker. When my friends were like, come off the island and stay with me, I'm like, oh, no, not leaving my city. It would be 2 weeks before I could get back to my apartment. When I got there, my terrace was filled with office furniture, files and folders from companies that were located in the towers. A lot of them were Cantor Fitzgerald. The toughest were the frames with pictures of children and families. And then there was the dust and the cement and the debris. Now, as I was cleaning and packing, because I was still moving, I found my planner, my organizer. It was filled with the life that I had wanted to create for a very long time and thought I was going to be starting on September 12th. Pages and pages of my dreams and my goals and my ideas, what I wanted from life and love and relationships, a career, a new business. I had in there what I knew were my divine gifts and my talents and my skills, and I was finally going to tap into them and explore them. And as I held that planner, I hugged it and I threw it away because I was pissed. I felt very selfish, and I felt unappreciative of the life that I had. Who in the hell did I think I was to want so much more when so many people had lost so much? And I know many of us felt that way. I was still alive. My family and friends were still alive. I lived, worked, and played in New York City. How many people get to say that? I owned a business that made money. Yes, my business partners were less than desirable. Our business relationship was dysfunctional, but it could be worse, right? My ex-boyfriend was not the greatest. Our relationship was not 100% fulfilling, and it was 100% dysfunctional. But I knew and understood who I was in that relationship. It was better than nothing. And we had been friends before we were a couple, and we did care about each other. Some people don't even have that. They don't even like the person they're with. So I allowed myself to stay stuck in an existence that didn't serve me. And I know a lot of us have done that. I stayed owner of a company I didn't want. I took back a man and stayed in a relationship I didn't want. I kept saying yes to people when I really meant no, and I kept ignoring that still small voice that was saying, Michelle, your life was meant to be lived big, lived great. What are you doing? There are so many lessons that we learned from 9/11. Some of them were felt immediately. Some of them were global. Some of them were felt months or years later. Each of us here has a story from that day, and if we allow ourselves to go back a decade to see where we were, to come back today and look to see where we are now, we will have our aha moments of learning and personal growth. What I learned and know to be true is that the universe does not put challenges in front of us that we cannot face and that we cannot work through. What I also learned is that one of the greatest powers we are born with is that of choice. We get to choose how we respond to moments, even those as horrific as 9/11. External moments and situations do not get to dictate who and what we are and who and what we're going to become. Unfortunately and initially, I used 9/11 as a scapegoat to settle and accept less than I deserve. Gratefully, that didn't last long. That whole lack and limiting negative belief system did last a few years, but I am now married to the love of my life, and we are expecting our first child on Thanksgiving, and my husband is praying that it happens after the football games are over. I sold my business, and I created a career that I love where I'm tapping into my natural talents. We were put on this planet to shine. That's what I learned. Each and every one of us has those divine gifts and talents and skills that we are supposed to celebrate and honor and utilize. And if we ignore them, we are not serving ourselves, and we're certainly not serving the world. We need each other. My hope is that at some point you are going to stop. Give yourself the gift of time. Think back to a decade ago. Look at where you are now. And if your life design, your life's dash is not in direct alignment with your heart and what you know to be true for you, guess what? You're not anchored to it or in it. Isn't that awesome to know? What I want for you all is for every day to look in that mirror and say, why not me? To create a dynamic and delicious life. Why not me to have my dreams manifested? And for all of us, I hope that we all continue to grow and learn from history. Thank you.